Hello friends, welcome to this laboratory course on non-ferrous metallography and characterization. The course code is MTLR36. My name is Gideon. Some of you might know me through the theoretical course on high temperature materials. I'm a newly joined faculty of our department, the Department of Metallurgical and Materials Engineering. And I will be handling this course throughout the semester and also of course evaluating your understanding of this course. Now I seriously wish we could have met under a different circumstance. I would have loved to see you and make your acquaintance, but unfortunately here we are given the times we are in, and let's make the best use of it. Now the courses or the lectures for this course would rather be flipped. The thing is, this is supposed to be a practical class wherein you would be doing a lot of things and learning while doing it. But like I said, unfortunately the circumstance that we are in does not permit us to do so. So let's do what best we can. Let's learn from the means that is possible to us and the time that is allocated to us. So to my understanding, I thought the best way would be to have this sort of a flip lectures wherein I would be sharing a pre-recorded lectures or link to the pre-recorded lectures, which of course you can listen to it at your own convenience. And if there arises any questions in the discussions or in the discourse I'm delivering to you pertaining to non-ferrous metallography and characterization, you can of course reach me. And depending on the number of questions I have, we can convene during the lab hours, which is of 3 hours per week. So we can plan some duration in those 3 hours and have a discussion, and if at all, if you have any doubts that you would want to clarify, we could do so in these hours. So please let me know if you have any difficulty with this mode of lectures, be it aesthetically like the camera recording or my voice or whatever it is. Also be it technically where you think that there are certain concepts which would require one-on-one discussion or in-person discussion or not, some sort of a virtual discussion. So please let me know if you think there are certain difficulties for you to follow such flip mode of lectures. Now coming to the evaluation part, like I said, this lab course is meant to be it's meant to be for you to do some practical things and learn from it, and generally we will be evaluating based on both how you have done things practically and how you are understanding it. But since now it has become more of a theoretical course, and the way I have so far planned to evaluate your understanding of this particular course is to have some sort of a group activity wherein each group would comprise of 4 members each. I guess the strength of this class is 64. That would be a very good way of partitioning this number. And before the end of the semester, as the time goes, we will decide what these group activities will be and how well you can deliver it. Of course, you would have the choice of either presenting it before the class or presenting it as a discussion. The plan is to have some other external professor along with me while doing this evaluation, so that be it presentation or discussion, we would be asking some of our doubts when you present your talk or when you have this discussion, when we have this discussion. And based on that, we will be evaluating your works. I hope these initial thoughts are clear. Please let me know if you have any questions. I believe there is already a WhatsApp group that's been prepared by your class rep, thanks to him. You can either reach me through that group, or you can of course mail me, which I'll be sharing after this lecture, or I'll be mailing you the links for this lecture, so you can of course respond to that mail as well. Now the syllabus for this course is fairly clear. It is available to you, and it is accessible through our institute webpage. Now, the syllabus or the topics that are involved can be categorized into two. One is there are some metallographic techniques that we need to learn, and there are microstructures of such certain non-ferrous alloys that we need to get acquainted with, so that if you get a chance to see one of these microstructures, you are able to immediately say, as someone who has attended this course, this maybe, or my educated guess for this microstructure would be this belongs to this alloy. So one of the goal of such practical course is to make you acquainted with, or to help you observe different non-ferrous microstructures, so that you could have that technically educated guesses. So that's a reason why we have this wonderful syllabus planned for us. And I personally would more or less be following this particular syllabus. So I guess I have made the introduction quite, the introduction is understandable to you, even though it's concise. So please let me know if you have any questions, or if there are any aspects that I missed out. So without further ado, let us get into, or please allow me in this course to introduce you to the metallography, or what actually it is. Maybe you have learned something about it in your previous semesters, or you have been exposed to some other metallographic techniques in ferrous alloys that I'm not aware of, but however it is. This would be for those who have already taken a metallography course. This would be some sort of a brushing up, but those who are new, let me try to introduce you to this metallography, or what actually it is. Again, if you have any questions pertaining to this introductory part of the course, please let me know, or if you want anything to be changed, please let me know. I am fairly flexible, particularly concerning that this is a laboratory course, and we have to engage ourselves, both you and me, we have to engage ourselves, and we have to put in some efforts to learn, and ultimately you will be evaluated based on that, and that is the place we are in. So let's make the best efforts to do that, and in order to make you do that, I'm fairly flexible. Please let me know how well I can tweak whatever introductions or plans that I have proposed so far, so that it is more helpful to you. At the same time, I don't want to engage you for all the 3 hours. I want you to do some learning, not particularly in that hours, but all the week that you have with you. So like I said, let's make this work both for you and for me. So without further ado, let's get into the introduction to metallography. So supposing you or one of your friends, you buy some metal equipments, let's just say a simple metal tube or metal tool, which is made up of a particular base metal. For the sake of this discussion, let us assume that it is made up of a non-ferrous metal. Since this is some sort of a thought experiment, we have all the liberty to choose what the metal can be. So we don't have to be so rational or so consistent. So for the sake of the argument here, let us assume that we or some of our friends have bought 2 hammers. Both of them are made up of copper as base metal. So what we have with us is 2 hammers, and these hammers are made up of 2 different copper alloys. And now when your friends or you, when you put those metal into work, when you put those hammers into work, you observe that one of the hammers, while working, it deformed, while the other hammer, it cracked. So when you used the hammers that you bought, that you are fairly sure is made up of copper alloys, but these are 2 different alloys. When you put it into the work, and you realize that they both behave in a different manner. One it deformed, while the other it cracked. Now we want to know what is the reason behind it. Why these supposedly an alloy or a material that is made up of copper alloy, why does it show 2 different behavior under the same condition? You want to know, or you want to understand that. So there are 2 ways to go about it. One is a purely theoretical way. You could go to the shopkeeper and get the composition that makes this alloy, and then you do some research and you find what is the phase diagram for this alloy, and you understand what are the phases that are involved in this particular, or what are the phases that comprises of this particular hammer, and then you deduce what is the property or what should be the property, and then you understand, okay, for this is the reason why these two hammers are behaving differently even though they are from the same copper base metal. So this is some sort of a rationalism or rational way of thinking, which is something that René Descartes would be proud of. But if you don't want to do this reasoning, or when you want to do something that is more practical, like you want to follow David Hume, or you want to have an empirical results, so what you would do is you would try to understand, or you would try to visually see. You are of the thought that what I see is what I believe. So you want to look into this hammer, and you want to see what is the structure of the hammer that these two different hammers have, or in their structures, what these hammers are made of, what is different, what is different, or that you want to see visually, and then you want to come to a conclusion why these two hammers behave differently. When you go that route, meaning when you want to visually see and understand the different behavior of these hammers, when you want to visually see what structures comprise of these hammers, and then based on that you want to understand these behaviors, then all these steps that you take going forward in order to visually see the structure that comprise of this hammer is part of metallography, or that is those steps comprise of metallography. So that is exactly what we will be dealing with in this course. We want to understand the behavior of a material, and like I said, one way is to do it purely in a theoretical manner, to get into its composition, to get into its phase diagram, and to understand the behavior of the constituent phases purely theoretically. The other way to do it would be to practically or visually see what are the constituent phases that comprises of each of these materials, and then understand why this particular material behaves in this manner. So all the steps that are involved that enable you to visually see the structures that comprise of a material, and then help you to relate to its behavior, all these steps that are involved are metallographical steps, or all these steps cumulatively form what we refer to as metallography. So I hope you understand that. Now metallography comprises of several steps. So initially, when you want to understand the behavior of the material, or particularly you would not generally want to do understand the behavior of an abstract material. So you would have you based on the application of material, you would be interested in that, and you would want to understand its behavior. So the first step that would involve is sampling. You would take a particular region of the material that you have been working on, and then you want to visually analyze it. So which part you sample depends on what you want to understand. And once you have sampled your material, then you need to prepare it for the visual observation. So after sampling from the material that you want to understand, or the material you are studying, you need to prepare it so that you are able to visually see, you are able to visually understand what are the different components or constituent phases that build this, or that this material comprises of. So for that you do sufficient amount of preparation, and once you have prepared your sample, then you go ahead with observing it. And after the observation, you would then relate whatever physical behavior you have seen with what you have observed. The observed structures you then would relate to your behavior that you have seen with the materials. So ultimately, the steps that are involved in metallography, you can easily relate to this to the example that we have considered ourselves while introducing metallography, that is the example of the hammer. So if you have an hammer that is deformed and that is broken, you would first you would not want to do the entire, or you would not want to see the entire structure, or you would not want to prepare the entire hammer. First you would do you would take a piece of that hammer that is first easily handleable to you, which you can easily handle. So you would take a piece of the hammer, and that is what is called as sampling. And then you would prepare it so that you can see the constituents that make this hammer easily, and that is what preparation is. And then you do the observation. You observe what these structures are, and ultimately, based on this observation or based on the constituent phases that are visible to us, you will then try to analyze and also try to interpret or try to extrapolate based on your observation why the behavior that we observe. And you try to relate this behavior with the structure that you have seen in the observation. I hope that is clear to you. Now, while sampling, like I said, the region that you focus on varies with what you want to study. Supposing you want to study a material that is failed. Now we want to see the reason for its failure. Then the region that you would focus on would be different from a material that is deformed or material that you just received as processed. So sampling involves recognizing a region of interest. This region of interest, it depends on what your interest or what your focus on. So to give a brief example, like I said, when you want to study a failed material, you will focus on the region where it has failed. If you want to study as processed material, which you are fairly sure that comprises of a homogeneous microstructure, you can take your region of interest can be anywhere. If you want to study a deformed material or a material that has undergone a forging, then you would want to choose a region of interest wherein you can see the reflection of the load that you have imposed to the material. So sampling, the main part of the sampling or the undergirding or the very critical part of the sampling involves identifying this region of interest, which varies with the sample that you want to study. Now secondly, preparation. There are numerous factors that would influence this process of preparation. And one of these factors is what actually you want to see. When you want to observe a material or you want to observe what are the constituent things or constituent microstructure or the or constituent phases that make up this material, since you are from a background of metallurgical and materials engineering, you would directly go for observing the microstructure of the material. You want to understand why a material behaves in a certain way, and you want to go the route of observing the structures and then relating it to its behavior. Since you are from this department or from the background of metallurgical and materials engineering, you would directly go for observing the microstructure of the material. But that doesn't have to be the case always. For instance, there are structures that form in a material that are easily visible to us in the naked eye. So those structures are what we call as macrostructural features. These macrostructural features, like your microstructural features, they also influence the behavior of the materials. So when your features of your materials are so large that it can be viewed by naked eye, so then why would we want to go the extra length of preparing the material for microstructure and viewing it using a microscope? When your structures are so large that you can see it with your naked eye, you can the best way of doing that, or the optimal way of doing that, would be just preparing it so that even with the naked eye you are able to see that. Now these features are sometimes they are very critical, and they are sufficient to understand why a material behaves in a certain manner. For instance, when you want to study a crack or a failure of a material, why this material has failed, or the mechanism behind the failure of the material, can easily be understood by just visual observation, wherein you don't need any extra setups like microscope or anything. Just by looking at into the failed region of the specimen, you would be able to see, or you would be able to deduce why this material has failed. So this is one of the examples where you don't need any microscope, but still is a part of the metallography. And the other examples are when you want to study build characteristics of some metals, some joint metals. Like here you could easily see where the weld bead is, where the heat affected zones are, and where the base metal is. So for these observations, you no longer need optical microscope. And when you don't want to use, or when you don't longer need an optical microscope, that means you can save a lot of time in preparing the material. You can choose appropriate preparation techniques, particularly for viewing this macrostructural features. These macrostructural features are not just confined to cracks or weld characteristics, which of course very rarely you would take a microstructure into consideration or a microscope into consideration to view these things. In addition to these cracks and weld characteristics, you can also observe the grain structures for as cast materials. As you can see here, when you have large cast ingots that are formed through solidification, the grain sizes are so large that you would be able to see those without any use of any microscope through your naked eye. So these are the features, some of the features that are macrostructural in nature, and you don't need a microscope to look into it. So when your features are in such a way that you don't need a microscope, you can view it through your naked eye, then your preparation technique correspondingly changes. All you need to do is make the specimen or the features of the specimen visible, and so that when you view at it, you are able to see the different grains or the cracks or the different features of a welded specimen. Now, something that we are fairly acquainted with is observing the microstructural features. Now, we can use, depending on the feature or or what we are interested in, we can either use optical microscopy to view these features that are confined to the microstructure of the material, or of course we can also use electron microscopy. Now, just to give you an example, the solidification or the microstructure or the features that result from solidification, which was in ingot, case of ingot, which was macrostructural in nature and which we were able to see in the naked eye, can also be seen using optical electron microscopes. And maybe these structures, now they vary, the size of these structures vary with the treatment that the material has gone through, and therefore these features, the sizes of these features may vary. But in those cases, when these features or their sizes are different, in those cases we go for microscopy. So initially, when the features are large, we can just look at through our naked eye, and when they are small, we go for microscopy, and both these form part of metallography. The reason I introduced you to macrostructure observation is because it doesn't mean that only when a microscopy is involved, it becomes a part of metallography, but even the macrostructural features or the way you observe it, even though it just involves it's a naked eye observation, it is also a part of the metallography. Now, these macrostructural features and the microstructural features, these scales you are fairly familiar with, in the sense when you know what is the size range for microstructural features, or when a feature can be viewed in the microscopy. Meaning, if it's not visible through our naked eye, then the next option left for us is microscope. And when it is visible through naked eye, then we categorize it as microstructural features, and we look it through our naked eye. Now, between these macrostructural and microstructural features, there is a scale, or if we categorize this as macrostructural as up to 1 mm and the microstructural as from 1000 micrometers, there is a scale that is between these two features, and these is called as mesostructural features, or the scale it's called as mesoscopic scale. Now, the range for the scale is 1 mm to 100 microns. This mesoscopic scale or the features pertaining to the scale can sometimes be viewed using microscope, or sometimes to get the finer details you need a microscope, or just to get an overview, just a naked eye observation is sufficient. So your preparation ultimately, the reason why we introduce these different scales is our preparation for the material for observation depends on the size of your features that you want to observe. When your feature is so large that you can look at it through just by naked eye, the preparation technique accordingly changes. When your features of the material are so finer, you have to go for microscopic technique, then the preparation of the material changes. But even in microscopic technique, depending on whether it is optical microscopy or electron microscopy, the preparation technique that you adapt changes. Now, if there is maybe some of you are introduced to the scale in this lecture, that's good. So if this feature pertains to the mesoscopic scale, which falls under the range of 1 mm to 1000 microns, then depending on your focus, if your focus is just to get an overview of the feature, you can just stick with the observation of your physical eye. Or if you want to get into the finer details of your structure, then you can look into you can use microscopic techniques in order to get the finer details of your structure. So with this information on the factors that govern your preparation techniques, or the different scales based on which your preparation technique will vary, I would like to end this lecture as part 1 of introduction, so that you could take a break and we could continue ourselves from this very place, and we will try to wind up with one of the preparation technique. So let me pause here or give a break here, and we will see ourselves in the second part of the introductory lecture. Thank you.